Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining the webinar this morning. Basically, what the webinar will go through today is we've just released version 3 of our Buildsoft on-screen takeoff, or BT2 as it's known. So what I would like to do this morning is just run you through some of the main new features that have been added, because we've changed some things like the defaults. There's a couple of extra new features. We've got the new calc sheet option in there. So it's a little bit different from version 2, so I'd just like to walk you through some of those features. So I'll begin by just launching the software, which is, instantly when you've updated or you've loaded the new BT2 version 3, you will notice the different layout changes that we've added. So the ribbon is the first section I will concentrate on. You'll know now that instead of having one main ribbon with all features on it, we've now broken that up into 3 tabs. You've got your Home tab, which includes your editing format, your shapes, the formatting now, which is being streamlined, your drawing, your openings, and your plans. We've also added a new View tab, and the View tab contains features such as your 2D view, the ability to view it in 3D, your display options, including a new hide takeoff function, which I will show you this morning, and then obviously your panes there of how you can use your navigation. We've also added in a data tab, and the data is to do with your report printing, your exporting it, and then importing features such as the BIM reader information or importing features from our MudCharts Earthworks takeoff system as well. So the main screen now has been broken up into 3 sections. You've got your estimate option, which now has a nested calculation sheet and rate sheet, which we'll talk about. You've got your viewport now in the center, and we've also then added in the right-hand side, which includes your plans, your new task function, your navigation option, and your details. Okay, so one of the main new features, what we've updated in version 3, is how you can work and how the software deals with the current plans that you have imported into your job. The first thing we've done is we've replaced the previous layers window pane with a new plans pane. Okay, the plans pane displays a list of the current plans loaded in your job. It also shows you which ones are visible and which ones are not visible in the viewport at the particular time. What you can also do on the viewport is you can display, if there's a particular plan that's not currently on or visible, we can now right click on it and we can choose open plan directly from that, as opposed to using the old manage tool that was in there. So if I wanted to display this particular CAD file, I can just now select open plan from a right mouse click, and that will turn on and display the CAD file as normal in the viewport. What it also does over here now is directly underneath each CAD file, it will now display a list of the layers that are currently visible on that CAD file. So what you can see now is I've got a CAD file loaded and 2 of the layers are not visible when the other ones are. So I can use the new eye function, which replaces the old light bulbs, and I can simply just click them and that displays them on and off. So you can use these functions to interact with the CAD file, turning off layers that may not be applicable to the current type of work you're doing, but you can always turn them back on and off as you need to. We've also added some interaction with the viewport in dealing with the layers when you have a CAD file loaded. So what we can do is, if you wanted to, currently I have all layers visible. So let's say I only want the internal walls on screen. So rather than have to unselect all items just to leave one on, what we can do is, if we unselect that particular layer, so I basically hide that or make it invisible, I can then right click in the viewport and I can now use the new option, which is invert layer visibility. And what that does is that turns off, it makes all visible layers invisible, and it makes all invisible layers now visible in our viewport. So it's just a quick way of being able to go in, nominate what you're looking for and only select what you need visible in your viewport. You can easily turn back on all layers if need be, using the little eyes on the right hand side. What we've also done then is we've revised the default option setting within the software. Okay, and we've also added some new functionality of how plans are dealt with when you're opening a job. So if I come up to my job tab at the top and I come down and I select my options button, this will bring me into the new revised options screen. Okay, and the first page is general, and you can see you've got a section for plans in here now. Two new options have been added. The first one is action when opening a job, and the second one is maximum open plans. Okay, so the first one, action when opening a job. So what you're allowed to select in here is what you would like the software to do with the plans when you're basically opening up a previous job. So you're going back into a job that you've already worked on. The default state is open last used plan. So what that will do is it will open the last plan that you worked on, so you're instantly back where you last were working in the job. You can choose on the list to open all recent plans, so that will actually open multiple plans when you're opening the job, so you can see all the plans you used on your last visit. You could decide that you don't want it to open any plans when you open it. So what that will do is that will when you're opening a project, it will mark all plans on our right hand side as invisible. Okay, and you can simply just use the open plan option to make them visible when you need them when you're back in. So it's up to yourself which one you prefer. As I was saying, the default option is to open the last plan that you were working on. We've also added this new function, maximum open plans, to help users with, low spec machines can basically contain and control the virtual memory they have available on their PCs. So version 2 just made it that it was always unlimited, and it was up to the user to control, to open and close plans to control the memory on their PCs. So what we've added now is we've added a new function to help you deal with that. Okay, the default state is 2. If you would like it to make it like a traditional takeoff system where it can only deal with one plan at a time, you can simply decrease that number from 2 down to 1. Okay, but as you know, BT2 allows you to work with multiple plans at the same time. So if your PC is of good spec, you can just increase that number as you'd wish. And that, as the minute I've got it saying 6, so that allow me open 6 plans at a time. I can always increase that to whatever we wish. Okay, now if you leave it at the default state, which is 2, what the software will do is if you come around to opening up a third plan, it will automatically close the first plan for you. You can then choose to open that plan again as the next time you need it. None of your data will be affected. That will still all be visible in your estimate screen, but it just allows you to control the virtual memory of your PC. Okay, one of the other new features we've added to our options screen while I have it open is on our dimensions tab. What we've now added to the software is the ability for users to do measurement in both metric and imperial. Okay, for users that deal in multiple regions or multiple locations in the world, where some of our users in the United States, let's say, like to deal with imperial. So what you can choose is you've got the default option being metric, but now what we can do is we can switch between metric and imperial. So as you're creating a job, you can choose what measurement unit type you would like to use. Okay, we've also added some new default option for reports. Okay, so the reports allows you now to see you can insert a logo onto any of the reports generated in BT2. You can update and nominate the headings, particularly on the new rate breakup sheet report that's been added to version 3. You can choose the font type that you'd like to use on your report. So if your company has a particular font that they use as their standard, you can now set that in the software. And you can also then, there's a sales tax option, so you can call in, what the name of the tax is. So that could be VAT, it could be local tax, it could be GST, and also the percentage rate of VAT that you'd like to add on to your particular reports. Okay, so that's a list of the default options now changed, and as you can see, it's been revised. There's less clutter in it to make it easier to use. Okay, one of the new changes we've added then is across here to the estimate screen. Okay, the new pane for estimate has been basically consolidated. Okay, it now has the estimate, and it also has a consolidated calculation sheet and rate sheet that you can use for each item as you go along. And as you can see, our familiar calculation sheet for those of you who use either the Buildsoft Global Estimating or Offsider Estimating would be familiar with the calc sheet. So that replaces the old shape results screen that used to be in BT2. Now you can have both measured items and non-measured item, like custom entities not associated with any shapes in your viewport. So what I mean by that is we can come along and we can create manual items and measured items together into one quantity. What is also being made available on your estimate is the ability of how you deal with headings. Previously you had a limit of 3 headings. We've now replaced H1, H2, H3 with the heading button, and that allows you to actually have as many headings as you'd like for a particular item, all nested within each other. So I could come along and I could just have, say, main heading as an example, and I can mark that as a heading. What we've also got the ability, and I'll explain it a little bit now, is you've also got the ability of setting a default result for each section. So if you create a heading such as, say, floor areas, you can make the default state of this category areas, and every new item that you create for measuring under there will have the default area result. So it's just a way of setting a default so you don't have to keep going back and setting it. More applicable when you are using something that's not the default area is the default. You can use lineal. So, but what I wanted to explain then was the heading. So you've got your first heading, then we can come down and we could create a subheading, and I can make that as a heading as well. Then I can come down and I could say subheading, subheading, and mark that as a heading, and now I can come down and create another subheading. So you're no longer limited to having individual 3 headings. You can create as many headings as you want in the software to give you your categories as you need. And then, as I was saying, you can set a default result type. So when you come down to measure an item, say it's floor area, okay, by default it gives you an area result for the item, and you can see you get your unit of measurement. So you can create as many nested headings as you need under each item for yourself, each with a default category if required. Okay, so just coming back to the calculation screen that I was mentioning for you, what that allows you to do is, let's say I change the name of this option to say Pats and Pavings. That's a bit more applicable to the job. Okay, and I still want to know what the area is. Okay, we've now got our calculation tree. So say I come up and I zoom up on my section that I want to use. One of the new functions then is when you want to measure an item. Previously we had the new shape window. That has subsequently been replaced with this new window called new task. Okay, new task allows you to go in and give it a description. Okay, so I can come along and say I want to measure, say, the patio, being the description of the work for the calculations. This is annotating your shapes as you go along. You'll notice that it's also being condensed and a lot of the clutter has been removed from it. Okay, so now you've got an option that if you were doing an area by pitch, you can enter in your pitch, but you've also still got your factor option. So for those of you using version 2, you'll notice that the color options for particular marking up your drawings have been removed from the new task window. They've actually been added to the ribbon here for the format to make it a lot easier and a lot more simpler to choose what you want to measure. Okay, previously you would have remembered that you would have had to pick a line color, a fill color, and a fill sort of transparency volume that you want to mark it up. They've been condensed now into 2 options, so you simply pick a color for the type of work you want to do. So say in this example I want to pick off, you know, sort of slightly orange color, but I also have a fill option, and the fill option now has 3 options available to you. It has outline, it has transparent, and it has solid. So outline will just give you the perimeter of the area in a particular color. It won't fill the particular, it won't shade the shape as you're used to. You can choose, would you like it to be transparent, which has a default transparency of 50%. So that will give you the outline and some shading, but still visible. Or you can make the fill a solid color. And what also happens here then is it also carries these colors and these transparencies through to the 3D takeoff or the 3D view option, but I'll explain that a little bit later. So let's say I choose transparent there, so I'll get a 50% transparent. Okay, you've got your line type etc as normal and your line size that hasn't changed. But so I'll come across to my viewport and I'll just simply measure this particular shape. So again, we'll just simply use our functions here. So we'll come around, you know, I want to do my curve thing, so I'll turn off the default option of ortho so I can get my bend. So the curve option is still the same. You can simply bend that around, you know, and we'll turn back on our ortho function then just to help us with the straight lines. Okay, so what we're doing is we're simply just marking out our area as normal. Okay, and we can join that back up by a simple right mouse click. So you'll notice then that straight away I get my quantity takeoff. Okay, that hasn't changed. Okay, so but when I click away from it, you'll notice as on the viewport, what's happened is it's automatically giving you your outline and your shading pattern to show you where you've marked up your drawing. Okay, as before, if you'd like to turn on the dimensions, you simply come up to your view option and you can turn your dimensions on and off as need be. Okay, so that hasn't changed. The location is just moved to your view tab. Okay, so when you select the item, what you've got now is you'll notice that it's added that particular area and it's placed it in the calculation sheet. But we now have the ability either to measure a second item, or we can manually add items to our calculation sheet to adjust the quantity, but actually not affect the actual viewport or a particular shape on there. So I can actually come along and add in some manual items entered here. Okay, so like a previous calc sheet, because I've got my area results selected, I've now got available a length and a width column. So you can actually come along and you can type into these values for yourself, and that will increase the total there. But if you would like to make that item a deduction line, you've got your deduction column here is deduction. You can just say yes, and that will automatically mark it as traditional Buildsoft users know a red color to highlight that it's a deduction line, and that will automatically reduce the quantity by that value. So the calc sheet throws you your true value less your deductions, carrying forward to give you your quantity cell as before. Okay, there's also a rounding option available for you. The default state is exact, but we can hit the drop down menu there and we can then choose, would we like that quantity to round up. So say you wanted it to round up, we can choose up, and that will actually round the quantity to the nearest whole number on the thing. So you can see I've got a quantity of 30 square meters, but my actual calc sheet is 29.52. So it shows you your true value on your calc sheet. Okay, what's also been added then is the rate sheet. So when you're on a quantity cell, it automatically appears the calculation sheet. But if I switch to the rate cell, it now defaults and shows you your rate sheet here, where you can list out your items. So as before, rates can either be typed in, okay, and as you can see, once you type in a rate, it automatically gives you a subtotal for each heading for yourself. Okay, so they can be typed in, or if you want, you can manually add items down here. So you can come down, and you also have the ability of adding in headings. So if you wanted to categorize materials, you know, plant items, labor items, you could do if you want. Okay, but let's say I come down here and I'll just say patio slabs, and let's say, you know, it takes 8 slabs per square meter, so I'll say 8 number and just say there, let's say €5 per each one. Okay, you've also got a plus, minus and a number column here as before, so you can deal with percentages, etc. if you want to, but I won't do that for today. So let's say I come down and I've got labor items. Now what has also been added to all numeric values in the software, both on the estimate calc and the rate sheet, is the ability of doing simple mathematical operation and formulas applicable. Okay, so what I mean by that is, if let's say the quantity cell happens to be you wanted to enter a formula as opposed to just a value, you can simply just type in the cell. So let's say I say it's going to take 2 guys a half an hour, so I'll go 2 multiplied by 0.15, okay, and that will automatically give me my total. Okay, and you'll show it that it's used for those used to the Buildsoft. You'll see that it still appears in the pink color, just to denote that you have entered a formula into that cell. Okay, so you can build up all your rate items there to give you your total value for the item, and it carries that forward up onto the rate cell, and again it shows you it's in blue just to highlight that it has been added, you know, from the rate level below itself. Okay, so what we've also added to the software then is a new what's called the 3D cube widget. Okay, and what I mean by that is when you view your takeoff in 3D, so let's say I come up and I want to measure certain, say, internal walls there. Say I want to measure in the 100mm thick stud partition walls, and I'll do this, say, on the CAD file this time. So I'll just zoom up on a particular section. Okay, so you got your particular internal walls there. So what I'll do is I'll come along, I'll say I want to measure off the item. Okay, so when you do it, you can come along, and as before, you can name what you want. Okay, so you can annotate your calc sheet if you want. I'll just leave it as shape 1 for today. I can still access and nominate the height because I'm choosing a vertical area. Okay, I can nominate the height of the wall. So again, it reads my default height, which I have entered for the job, which is 2.7, which is fine for what I'm about to do. I'll leave that the same, but just know you can change that as before. Okay, so let's say I want to start measuring some of the internal walls just to give us the 3D view. Again, what I can do is I can pick a color. So as before, I can come along and I can say, alright, well, I want to pick up, let's say I want my internal partition walls to show as a green color. Okay, and I can choose to have those as outline, transparent and solid. Okay, so again, I'll choose transparent. Okay, because I want to show you that that actual transparency now carries forward to your 3D image. So let's say I just measure some of these internal walls. So I'll choose my rectangle because that's a quicker way of just doing that little option. Okay, so I can just snap that through. Okay, you'll notice the color comes through as before and it adds it to the calc. Okay, so if I had certain, you know, I can just do, so using the rectangle just lets me think. But then I've got the irregular shape here, so I'll switch that back to my polygon tool. Okay, so because we've got the irregular shape coming down here, you know, so we'll just bend that around. Let me just finish off the shape then. Okay, so we've got our couple of internal walls. Now also what you've got available, you know, if you're doing certain irregular shapes here, you know, a lot of people don't remember it or didn't know it was there. You've also got the Polyline Plus tool available to you. It's a bit more visual now on the new ribbon. Okay, so what that allows you to do is instead of measuring the lines, you can just be, if I click on it properly, let's just cancel that one. So as you can see, when you hover over the item, it gives you a selection, so you can just select what you want. And if you've got rectangle wall, you can just be going around the walls in one go as before. Okay, so you can be measuring those very quickly using the polyline tool. So that reads the actual wall directly from the CAD file. Okay, so I've got my list of items that are measured. Again, the reason I was showing this was just to show you the 3D view. So now the 3D view has gone off the home ribbon. It's now available on the view tab. Okay, so you can switch between 2D and 3D, or it's also available on the quick access toolbar at the top. So again, I'll just choose 3D view. That'll convert that into the perspective view so we can see our thing. So what you'll notice here is you've got the new cube here appearing in 3D, and that just makes dealing in the 3D view a lot more user friendly and gives you a lot more control on how you can view it. You've also got then the quick access, so you can look at the front of it, you know, you can sort of look down from the front, down from the corner. So these are all available, just quick access to, or you can click and hold as before. What you'll notice as well then is the color and the transparency is automatically transferred through to show you on your viewport. So again, depending on how you've selected your color and your thing, that now carries forward to the 3D. So if you've got multiple items measured, maybe there's multiple different 4 rated walls or something like that, maybe there's wet area walls that, you know, are measured in a different color, they'll carry forward. So when you're looking at your 3D view or you want to take a picture or print that view, they'll carry forward onto your printout. As I was saying, the transparency then is just controlled by your fill option. So if you wanted to change that to solid, you can just make it solid. If you only wanted the outline, you can just make it the outline or give it the transparency. So it's up to yourself how you would like your settings to be made. Okay, so one of the new options as well then has been added regarding, say, as we're looking on 3D, and I always get asked the questions of how do we deal with openings on it. If I just switch that back to 2D, and let's say I just zoom up here on this section here, we've updated the opening section within the software. Like, we still have the library, okay, that's still available to you, okay, but what you've actually also got then is, instead of only being able to insert doors that you've added, say, to the library, now we've got a new insert door button. So when you go to insert a door, it calls up a list of your library, okay, and you can now filter based on any of these values. Okay, so like if you knew you're looking for 820 doors, you can just type in 820 and that will display a list of all doors with a width of 820 mil. Okay, it can also be by manufacturer, so you could come along and you could start typing in the manufacturer's name and that will display a list of all the openings of that. You've got a new option there if you want to add in a brand new one, or you can simply just type in here. So you could say door, say type 2, and you could say it's 2.04, maybe say it is, say, 820 wide, and it's 35 mil, and it's supplied by Munster. Okay, because maybe your Munster, they denominated subby on it, so it's nominated supplier on it, so we need to use them. So that wasn't on our list, so we just add it, we hit OK, and what that does, that allows me to drop on the opening as before, and those openings then will automatically add into our calculation sheet, reducing our overall total quantity for the item. Okay, but what also happens for you then is when you're actually adding them, okay, if we view that in 3D as before, okay, and I'll just zoom up and you can see your openings as before, okay, there's no difference there. I'll just make the thing solid there, makes it a bit easier to see. Okay, but what we've now got is, before you could only insert the opening and there was no adjusting that opening after the fact. Okay, but now when you select it on your details window down the bottom right, which is available, you've got the description of the opening, you've got its name, which you can change. You can obviously change the description, and you've also got the height and the width. Okay, So let's say, for argument's sake, this door wasn't supposed to be 820, it was an off sort of door, so we wanted to be 830. All you do is you can go back in and you can amend that opening now by changing the value, hit return, and that automatically saves that value in there for yourself, and it makes that slightly wider and adjust the quantity accordingly. So you can now, amend what you've done so you don't have to see it. Okay, so you can adjust that as need be, and that goes to windows as well as the doors. It doesn't have to be just the door values for yourself. Okay, now a function that a lot of users has asked us, okay, is we've all had the function of being able to say zoom up and hide whatever. So similar to the layer functions, we've got the option across here for the eyes, so we can actually hide and turn on and off or take off as need be. Okay, we can also individually click on calc sheet items as well for visibility. But a lot of users who would have a lot of takeoff on a particular viewport, okay, say you got 30 items measured for each one, a lot of our users are saying, well, we'd like to be able to just turn off everything but leave one item on. So you can now do that in the viewport using the similar functionality as the layers for CAD files. So, and it works for both PDFs as well, it's not just CAD files. What you can do is, if you say you wanted to find and highlight a particular item, say we wanted that particular wall there, okay, what we could do is we could unselect it, which turns it off, but we can then right mouse click in the item, okay, and we can go invert shape visibility, okay, and similar to the CAD, that will actually invert the takeoff and turn everything that's on off, and vice versa, turn everything that's on back on. So that's one way of doing it. Obviously you can show all shapes can come back on then as well for yourself. The other option, if I just turn them back on, okay, the other option then for yourself is using the new hide takeoff function, okay, and what that is, and I'll just show you that one on the PDF file. Say I'd added in a new result down here, okay, so say I just quickly add a shape. Doesn't have to be too exact. Okay, so we've now got 2 items there. Say you don't know where it is or what it's located. You just want to get rid of this section of the screen uncluttered. You don't delete them, you just want to hide the visibility. Okay, so what we can do is, if we come up to our View tab, we've now got this new function which is called Hide Takeoff. And that basically lets you select a section of your plan, and it will hide any layers that are within the area that you select. And what I mean by that is, so when we come across to our viewport, I can drag a box around any section of the plan, and when I release my left mouse button, it will automatically turn off anything within that area that I've selected. So it's just a good way of, if you're unsure of what it is, you can just sort of select everything by looking at it and getting rid of it. You can obviously turn back on and say show all shapes, okay, and that will just turn back on what you've got. Another function that we've added to the viewport is what's called zoom to selected. Okay, now what that is if you've got a particular item that you've measured, okay, say I select that item there and I say, well, where is that on my viewport? What I can do is I can select that, and you can come up then to your viewport, and you've got this new option which is zoom selected. Okay, and what that will do is that will just jump you directly to the item you've measured. Okay, so it doesn't matter where you're located, all you got to do is, if you select something and you go zoom to selected, I'm going to select it first. Oh, clicking on the wrong one. Okay, so we can go zoom to selected, and that will zoom you up on the particular item that you've selected. Okay, so it'll quickly grab it for you and zoom you up into the area you need to. So just a quick way of getting back to somewhere you want to isolate and work on. Okay, so that's pretty much a lot of the new features added regarding the 2D side of stuff. We've also added a couple of new functionalities regarding the BIM reader software. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll go to my data tab and I'll click on my BIM reader option, and that'll just launch our BIM reader takeoff software there. So for anyone who's used it, you'll notice straight away that it's a lot cleaner. You know, they've added in a new ribbon with some new functions and some new icons. They've also separated the viewport and the takeoff into two separate window panes. Okay, we've still got the normal object tree and the properties window. So at first glance, once you have a model opened, you can see everything instantly in front of you. So I'll just quickly open a model. It's asking me, you know, it now prompts you to say, would you like to display it? I'll just say yes. Okay, and I'll just load up and center up the drawing. So you've got your normal cube as before, so that's being added. Okay, so as you can see, when you open up a model, it imports and gives you a list of the objects on your left hand side as normal. Okay, it shows you your model in your viewport, but then it also displays a list of all the objects that are associated with that. And as I scroll down, you can see that it also shows you, you know, the object-based quantities that are associated with the model. So obviously this is the overall model, so it's adding up everything. But let's say I isolate the walls. So I click on the walls, you'll notice that it highlights all the walls, and it also displays the quantity. So I can see that the overall total wall area is 6,664 square meters. I've got an overall length of about 329 meters. It's reading in that value in millimeters, in case you're wondering. So like as normal, it's reading that from the Revit model. So we'll just use our conversion tool that's built into the Buildsoft BIM reader to convert that millimeter takeoff to a meter, because that's what we price it as. So we're not going to price it based on mil. So that will just convert that and all the children item underneath it to a meter value. Okay, so one of the main new functions they've added is the ability to interact with this object tree to isolate certain items that you want to work on. Okay, so what I mean by that is, let's say you only want to work on the walls at the minute, but the model is in complete form, it's showing you everything. So what you can actually do is you can right click on the object, and it'll give you a drop down menu where you can say show and hide others, show all, and transparent. So if I wanted to hide everything but the walls, I simply left click on it, and that'll just isolate the wall items within the model. You can then go further down, so you can expand down your walls to give you a list of all the different wall types that exist in the model, and you can basically be clicking on them and that will isolate them. So not only will it isolate and show you them, it'll also display instantly the quantities that are associated with those items. Okay, if you want, you can easily just be clicking on each section of it as well, and it gives you the individual quantity of each one. It also down along the left here gives you any, you know, any constraints that exist with it, you know, such as the unconnected height, which might be handy for pricing, any constraints, the offset, etc. So you've got full access to all the information in the model for yourself, but you also have the ability, as I was showing you, to interact with the model. So you've got the new ribbon, you've got a new way of interacting. It still takes the quantity. You still have the ability of coming along and nominating what quantity you would like applicable. So say for walls, we don't want to know what the volume is, so we can just simply mark that as an undisplayed item. So when we return our quantities back to say BT2, we'll only get the area and the length of the walls, because that's what we might want to use in our bill of quantities. So I'll just close out of that, and that'll bring back and import those items as before. So I could obviously choose that I didn't want them, but just to show you how it carries forward, we can see then we get the area and the lineal, and you can obviously price them up as using your normal one to give you an estimate based on the BIM models as well, the BIM quantities, as opposed to any 2D measure items you've added in to the program. So that's that's the total webinar. I'll open it up to questions now for anybody that would like to ask any. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you find it enjoyable, and sure, check back soon for more interesting and exciting features from BT2. Thank you.